Hello and welcome to the Enquiry podcast. My name is Nerida Mills. I am your host, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you along for this episode. What we do in the Enquiry podcast is really explore and inquire with experts in their field in regards to what it is that actually creates the human experience, and more importantly, what it is that we can use to influence the human experience for our own development, growth, and expansion. So, welcome along. Let's dive in, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the first Inquiry podcast of 2026. This is exciting. What makes it even more exciting is that I have the amazing Stacey Adams with me today. Hi, Stacey.
Hello. I'm so excited to be the first podcast of 2026.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really timely, actually. It was kind of like serendipitous in a way that it's kind of landed this way. But, if you think about most people's New Year's resolutions, they're going to be either health, money, or relationships, right? So,
Yeah.
super excited to be talking to you about money, and I'm sure that will leak into relationships somewhat also. So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, etc.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm a Kiwi from New Zealand in a little town called Christchurch. And I'm a money coach, so I help people to remove the emotion from their money and also just the overwhelm and be able to communicate better about their finances and be able to help move forward from where they are to where they want to be, and really building up and changing their mindset and their beliefs around their finances. So I'm married to my beautiful husband, Matt, who we've been together for 2 years coming up, which has gone so quickly. Yeah, and when I'm not sort of coaching people, I do a little bit of working in mental health in the social work space over here, and also just, yeah, love to connect with my family and my friends, and my niece and nephews are very important to me as well.
Okay, love that. So, busy woman, I mean, I would love for you to talk to us about why mindset and money rather than like strategy and money. Like, where
Yeah.
do you see or how do you see the importance on mindset over strategy?
Yeah. So I think, just with like my journey, right? Like it felt like money was really emotional in our house. It wasn't really something that we found was kind of communicated with, right? But if you spoke to my sister, for example, her experience of it was totally different to maybe how I perceived it. And not that it was terrible or anything like that. It just felt emotional. It felt like something that couldn't be talked about or, expressed. And during my journey, I guess what I've like realized is that, it doesn't matter how much money you have. And actually, the more that you have, if you don't have the mindset to back it up or the belief that you can do it, then it's you're just going to have the same patterns and the same things kind of play around. And what I was kind of finding is that, people would go and talk to like financial planners or things like that, but they weren't getting to the root cause of kind of what was going on.
Mm.
And it became really emotional for people. And so, you know, they would be trying to do like a budget or a plan, but they wouldn't have a different outcome. And I think that's sort of why I've blended it, is that I realized, like with my mum's story, for example, that, it wasn't that she was shit with money at all. She worked so hard. At times, she would work two jobs to, make sure that us kids had a roof over her head. But my parents didn't want to communicate about it. And I always remember she wanted to be a nurse, and, she just never went and took that extra level because she didn't think that she was good enough. She didn't think she'd have the brains to be able to do it. And so if you break that down, she never went any further with that, which then meant that her paycheck couldn't go any further. It meant that she had a view about herself that, she was kind of almost stuck in a way. And so no matter what she did, she was trying to pay off the bills or try to get ahead with her finances, but there was never going to be a different outcome because of the way that she viewed herself.
Mm. Is that something that you feel like isn't spoken about enough. Like I'm curious around like what's obviously, we live in a very affluent time in society, and well, for definitely New Zealanders and Australians, um,
Yeah,
and even, people in Europe and the US. There's a little bit of fluctuation there, but predominantly, if you look back in history, like we live like kings and queens. Like I was having this conversation with Adam the other day. I was just laying on my bed and I started giggling, and he's like, "What are you giggling about?" And I was like, I literally live like a queen, like we
yeah,
we have we have this mechanism. We've developed a mechanism where I can make hot water turn on whenever I want. Like if you think
yeah,
about even just going back a couple of 100 years, like if you had hot water on tap that you didn't have to boil yourself, you're a king or a queen, right? You're in royalty,
yeah,
you're in some form of
yeah,
very affluent lineage. And I mean, that's just one element of what we're currently living with, and what got me thinking
yeah,
it was the comfort of my bed and the pillows and, like just simple stuff that we now view as simple stuff.
yeah,
Not that long ago was very, very affluent. But then, so we live in these affluent societies and we have all of this ease available to us. And yet I think people feel so lacking
yeah,
in
yeah,
who they are and what they've created. And I've seen that with people close to myself. I've seen that in my clients where, people have really solid bases, but they feel like they don't have enough. They feel in this like poverty kind of mindset, even though
yeah,
they have no problem getting enough food. They just can't afford takeout every night, like
yeah,
silly
yeah.
like that. So what do you feel like is the cause of that, I guess, or the missing conversation around that?
So I kind of see it as there's kind of two scales to that. So, like you kind of said, in my grandparents' era, like they stayed at home, they raised their children and stuff, and now the world is just so different. Like, I think, like some of my friends, you've got to now have like a built house or like it's gone up a level, right? And therefore that's where we just can't settle.
Mm,
And I think, I don't know, I personally believe that social media has a bit to play with it
yeah.
because we're constantly kind of comparing ourselves, right? And so sometimes what I see in my clients that I support is that they might have certain jobs or like a certain job title, and that's where they kind of see their status,
Mm,
whereas they're not recognizing like their own skills or who they are, right? And so therefore they're almost trying to keep up with that way of living or the people that they're kind of surrounding themselves with, and then we miss the kind of the piece of the puzzle of being, like you're saying, being grateful for kind of what we've got. And because I think about it, and like especially in my like era and with my friends and stuff, like you know my grandparents, they would like make everything, and they could make like $200 go a like really far away. But I think now we're living in such a, because I think of technology is it's we constantly need a hit all the time.
mm,
And so if it's a bit like that, we're so short-term focused that we need something instantly and we need it now, and we don't want to go through the pain of what it takes in order to get there sometimes, and then that creates debt. um because it's too hard to have the conversations like no is a full stop, but yeah, it's too hard to say that, and next minute you're going into it and then you've got a bigger problem. I think the flip side of it though is that sometimes, once you've sometimes I was having a conversation with someone at the gym yesterday, that the flip side is that maybe we do have the money or that we are wanting nice things, but we don't feel like we're deserving of them. So this girl was like, oh, I said what I did, and she's like, oh, I have to come and have a chat to you, but you'll probably tell me to take my gym membership off me because it's too much. And I said, absolutely not. Like, that is not what I'm about. I said, we really want to make sure that the flip side is that we bring your important things into it and then see what's not necessarily as important and change it around. So yeah, I think at the moment we're on this pendulum. It was either we can't wait for things, so therefore we get them,
Yeah.
or we don't get what we think, or we don't get what we want, essentially.
Yeah. And it is like, I think, what you were saying before, like with social media and stuff. I mean, I think social media has a lot to answer for in a lot of regards. Obviously, there's benefits to it, but that comparison
Yeah,
piece, like I think it was, I remember who I was listening to on a podcast. It could have been Anthony Robbins and Steve Bartlett. I've been listening to that one this weekend, and phenomenal podcast, FYI, if anybody's interested. Really, really good. And they were talking about how, we used to compare ourselves to maybe our neighbors, maybe our
yeah,
extended family. And now it's like we're comparing ourselves to the billionaire that runs a multi-million-dollar company, or some influencer that's got millions and millions of followers. And if we don't have the capacity to have what they have, then we're not good enough. And it's like, I mean, marketing companies have just as much to answer for in this. They literally
yeah,
are really utilizing that innate primal desire to be good enough to sell.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and like you say, we're quite impatient now. So what I'm hearing is expectation, or realistic expectation is a really important piece of getting the right mindset around money. Would that be accurate?
yeah, yeah, and knowing where you're at, as well. I like my sister was too scared to put her Christmas tree on Instagram, for example, because she was worried it was like, was there enough presents under there and stuff? It's like, so yeah, this expectation where sometimes it can't be met. But I think, and I know I've known you for a while now, and like what you do really well is that gratefulness, right? And really recognizing what kind of where it's at and what's important to be able to then not lower the expectation, but know where you're at so that you can match it.
Yeah. Well, I think mine comes from like a real deep appreciation of history, partly. Because if like, we are in such a bubble of the human experience, and I don't think people really appreciate how well off we actually are, like how peaceful things actually are, and how affluent we actually are. Like it really wasn't that long ago. Even if you go back 50 years, people didn't have the luxuries that we have today. You know,
No.
and I think because it was sold back then, and even 30, 40 years ago, I remember as a kid them selling the future as this time that where we're going to have all of this free time, and we're going to be in matching jumpsuits and like stupid stuff. But the timepiece hasn't really caught up with the affluence. And I think
Yeah.
that although it might with AI, but that's I want to go into that conversation with you in a minute. Um, but I think the scarcity around time then gets projected into the scarcity around experience. And it's
Yeah.
like, if I'm constantly feeling in a state of desperation around time because I feel like I need to constantly be on for
Yeah.
my work or for my community or for my family or whatever, and we don't have any spaciousness in time anymore, unless
Yeah.
we're really conscious around it, it's so easy to feel like, I get a break. What do? Get on my phone and start fucking scrolling. And so now
Yeah.
any spaciousness that I would have had in the past is being filled up by marketing, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what social media is ultimately all about. Like we think it's this social platform. It's not. It's the most fantastic advertising tool in the world. So
Yeah.
um, so we're constantly getting, bombarded with this information, and then, you put your phone down, you turn Netflix on, and then you turn Netflix off and you go to bed. So it's like there is no space in time, and I wonder like the amount of agitation that causes to the nervous system around this scarcity sensation, and how that then impacts our ability to feel worthy and deserving
Yeah.
and affluent, right? To actually really appreciate what we actually have.
And it takes away our creativity, like, because you said, like, you downloads or likes, when you create the space, you get the creativity and stuff, right? But then you
Mm.
can appreciate, I guess, the benefits of small things a lot more. But when that's been taken up with, something like that, yeah, I don't think we realize and much of an impact it's having on us.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be like
Yeah,
an inverted loop as well, because of course, the more you don't feel good enough, the more you're going to go to those short-term rewards. The more you go to the short-term rewards, the more that you're reconfirmed that you're not good enough,
yeah,
and
yeah,
down we go into this spiral of depression. No wonder why people aren't grateful for what they have. Because
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah. And then because I guess the other thing is it's accessible too, right? So then
Mm.
you've got other things like being able to buy online and stuff. So when you're not feeling good enough, then that's the time that you're going to buy something because then that gives you the hit and makes you feel good. And then
Yeah,
next minute we're in
yeah,
this
yeah.
loop again.
And you look at your bank account and you're like, shit, I don't have enough money to do whatever because I've just bought
Yeah,
flashing
yeah,
lights that are going
yeah,
around the cornices of my room for some unknown reason. Like, yeah, it's
yeah, yeah.
um obviously I've got teenagers because who else is going to buy flashing lights to go around the cornices of their not a lot of people. It's a random example.
Maybe just you in the room.
Oh dear. I've been really curious around, and I'm nervous is not the right word. But it's like I've got an intrigue and also um, just a little bit of caution, I guess, in regards to, as we're moving into this AI world and as AI gains more consciousness, which I know is debatable in and of itself, but that's what I believe is possible.
Yeah.
Um, and mass amounts of people lose work and etc etc. What do you feel like is going to be the most important thing to focus on from a financial standpoint in that? Because if you've got like, entire industries basically being laid off in a very short period of time, not just like a couple of workers or even thousands of workers, I'm talking like millions of workers in entire industries. They're
Yeah.
predicting it between the next 2 to 10 years, essentially, which is
Yeah.
far from now. And I really don't think a lot of people are paying enough attention to how to prepare themselves for it. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, there's things that we can do before that happens, and then, in how to manage when that does happen. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's first off, like it's really important that, you kind of know your numbers and you know what's happening in your finances to begin with. You've got a good plan in order to kind of sort that out and you're thinking about your future. So people are going to be on a continuum in terms of where that is. But, savings is super important, but also then starting to think about what does retirement and that look like. I think then it's really about knowing what you're good at and how else you can make money, essentially, and having and just thinking about that. Like I always talk about to my clients, like, what's your skill set? Because yes, you might have a job, but there's a skill set that allows you to do that job.
Mm,
And then you're not that you've got way more skill set above that you can kind of get paid for. So, a little example for us is that we've got a German flatmate at the moment, and she's leaving in this Thursday, and she wanted to use her car that she brought right up until Thursday, and she said, and I said, well, I'll sell it for you, but I'm going to get commission from it. And so I gave her like a figure in terms of how much I wanted on that. And she was either to say yes or no, which she did agree to. But that's something that's easy for me. I can put it on our trade, on Trade Me and get it sold, right?
mm,
But it was going to be something that was going to kind of cause her a little bit of stress. Now, is that how I generally get my income? Definitely not. But I think it's saying to think about that, right? I think in making sure that, yeah, you're protected above your job because I think, and you kind of saw that in COVID, right? The people that had it together weren't stressed. The people that, didn't have any savings would have definitely been stressed about what their jobs and stuff were going to do,
mm,
So I think it's about taking a little bit of self responsibility,
mm.
um, sorting it out, starting to sort it out now. It's never too late.
Yeah.
And thinking about long term as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting because what I'm hearing from you is sort of like a detangling of identity from employment or
yeah,
income source, and starting to look at, instead of I am a carpenter, I am whatever.
yeah,
Although I think carpenters will probably be doing really well moving forward, but that's another thing. But instead of that identifying into the role, it's like, well, what skill sets make up my ability to be really effective in this role? And instead of
yeah,
being dramatic around how they need to be presented, start getting creative around how else I can utilize that skill set um,
yeah,
in a way
yeah,
that might meet a new need, right? Because we don't even know. We don't know what the new needs are going to be.
yeah,
We can kind of guess at it, but
exactly.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
unknowns as far as what will survive from a uh, value-based proposition. Like I'm looking at it from a coaching standpoint as well. People say, oh, people are going to want face-to-face coaches, but I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think people want results, and
yeah,
and they want to feel heard and they want to feel seen, but we're already seeing that people are literally having relationships with AI bots. There's people in Japan who are married to AI, so it's like
yeah,
it's not that people don't have those or those experiences with an artificial intelligence. They do. And so where does that leave even service-based businesses like myself with coaching and counseling and psychotherapy and stuff like that? So um,
yeah,
it's so fascinating to me to look at, well, how, like, what are the mechanisms that are going to remain and what's actually going to shift and change.
yeah.
But I think, one of the things that you kind of mentioned there that I want to circle back to is, I guess, the stability in yourself around how you manage it. You didn't use that
Yeah,
language, but just how you were talking about, know what it is that you do and know what it is that that's worth, and then, have a plan in place in some
yeah,
way, shape, or form. So,
yeah,
um, I guess if we shift gears a little bit into the strategy of that, like not the strategy of managing the money, but the strategy of um, how do you unpack that for yourself? So for somebody who's listening who might never have done any identity work or self-belief work before, like where should they start?
I honestly think you can start with like podcasts, us, education, learning, reading, but also think about like who you hang around with or people that you admire and stuff and ask them questions, right? But also then challenge yourself, like, where is it that you, like, if it's money, like, where are you feeling like a little bit challenged by, right? And if it's, say, your how you view yourself, well, you could just do one thing that's going to really stretch your zone in that moment. And I think small steps really make the big difference. I am thinking about, even like, for me, if I break it down around my health, I've got a story around that. I've carried it for a long time. And I just knew that I needed to do something different. And so I challenged myself to go to a new environment. And so when I went to that new environment, like, it brought up everything. It was uncomfortable, but by stepping into it and then doing it again and then again, it's growing my confidence, it's growing my self-esteem, etc., because I've kept going. So yeah, I guess just, and if it's your money, like, just start small. Like, okay, if it's your debt that you're worried about, or you feel like you don't have a really good plan, or you don't have savings, or you've got one thing that you want to be better at this year, then just pick what it is and then make a little small thing that you can do around it. So it might be trying to reduce your expenses. So which expense you're going to try and reduce, or I'm going to make sure that I save the same amount of money every week, or like something that is big, but also it's got to be tangible and something that you can do, right? Because those little things is what builds your self confidence up, and then it's just kind of a flow on from there. But I think we can't underestimate like reading and understanding more and, getting inquisitive, asking questions, but also asking questions of people around us that we essentially look up to, or, think that they're doing a good thing in one area.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things that I heard like way back when I first started coaching was if you read 5 books in any area, then you're considered by most people to be an expert in that area because most people haven't picked up one. And so,
Yeah,
as far as the education is concerned, it's actually quite manageable to chunk it down like that. It's like, okay,
yeah,
over the course of the next year, could you read 5 books around financial intelligence? And what
yeah,
actually makes, I mean, I think that would make a huge difference because if within those 5 books, what you'll notice is there'll be a thread of education. There'll be common
yeah,
themes through that education that are going to hold the truth of what are those foundational pieces that really actually make the biggest difference, as
yeah,
opposed to, how people color those foundational pieces. Um,
yeah, yeah,
it's a really good piece of advice is to really get your mind around the way of thinking that is going to get you the results that you're wanting. And
yeah.
build the confidence. I'm a big believer in that as well. Like those small steps that build the confidence are so much more powerful than this massive leap that you might be able to do once every 2 years, and it freaks you the fuck out, and you
Oh,
have a mental breakdown about it. So,
yeah.
um,
And one thing that the other thing that I would also add is leaning into the discomfort. So like when it's hard, have the hard conversation. Especially if you've got a partner and you're wanting to talk about money, what is that hard thing? And Matt and I review our like finances and our goals every 3 months. But one of the important things that we also do in that time is we celebrate where we've come from. And that's really cool too, because like you said, like, we're at the start of 2026 and we're thinking about how our year is going to be different. And then we get to December and we forget about the things. And then we feel like it was another shit year or whatever. But actually, when you break it down into the 3 month blocks, you can achieve a lot and you generally are picking up the smaller steps rather than looking at a year. And then and then you get excited, you're celebrating that, and then you kind of move on to the next kind of quarter as well. So that's just something that we love to do.
yeah, I think that's so important. Celebrating where you've actually come from and being honest about where you are,
Yeah,
both to yourself and to other people, is a huge one. Like, we know everybody knows this. Most relationships break down because of finances. It's number one reason, right? So, and I think a huge part of that is because people aren't honest about it, and then all of a sudden the truth comes to light, and people feel betrayed. They feel like, if you haven't been honest about this, what else haven't you been honest about? Like all of those
yeah,
sorts of kind of question. So obviously your finances filter into your relationships quite significantly. One of the things that Adam and I committed to when we got together was we will never argue over finances. That's not
yeah,
going to be it. And so we're very graceful with each other around it, but also honest, very extremely honest about where we're at financially and what needs to happen, which is
yeah,
important. But it's having the hard conversations and actually like owning up to, oh, actually, like things didn't work out the way that I was wanting to this month. We're not in a position where I would like it to be, or actually things have worked out better than I thought this month, and we're in this position where, I want to celebrate with you, but I want to do it in a intelligent way and
yeah.
make sure that we're utilizing that for the future because we know that life does this, right? We have this.
Oh, yeah. And you can never like you can never get it right. It's such a good point, actually. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And that's hard to do. But you're only going to move forward from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's the best piece of education that you feel you received around money?
Gosh, that's a hard question, isn't it? Um, I'd have to say it would probably be from the coaches in terms of how we met around combining your finances together if you're in a couple. And yeah, I think the reason for that is because what's happening in your money is what's happening in your relationship. and it helps you to have those hard conversations, and be on the same page. And I get that obviously it has to be right for you. But once we did that, it just changed the landscape of our relationship, but also where we are now. Because, yeah, everything was on the open. We were going towards the same things. And yeah, I just remember getting that. It was on a coaching call and getting that advice. And we were like, oh, are we going to do it? And we're like, okay. And so scary, but it definitely paid off.
Yeah, I can understand why, because like I've had this conversation with my kids. I've always, not always, that's not true. In relationship with their dad, when we met, we both had nothing. So it was really easy to combine in that place. Um,
Yeah,
and just whatever we had, we shared. And because we pretty much just started living together straight away because we were in our early 20s and, no holds backs. Um,
yeah,
but what I found is later in life, a lot of people, if you haven't been in a long-term relationship in that 20-year period of time and you've spent a lot of time, effort, and energy building up your own financial stability, there's
yeah,
hesitation around that blending. And or
yeah,
if you've been in a relationship before, it's turned to shit and you've been hurt by that, then there's fear around going back in and putting everything into something, right? And so
yeah,
can understand the hesitation. And at the same time, you can also see where the hesitation would cause a lack of experience of partnership.
yeah, yeah,
If it's like, if we've got to work out how much do I owe you every week, or vice versa,
yeah,
it's sort of like it's me versus you rather than us together.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting. And the generation coming up, they handle things in a really personally responsible way predominantly, but I've got a very different viewpoint on the upcoming generation than a lot of people. I know that, but my experience of them is that they're quite responsible. They're very emotionally intelligent, and they are here to change the way things have been done. That's literally their job. So
yeah. I
um,
agree.
it's interesting to me that there's figuring out how does where does that live in amongst this financial conversation of like me being responsible, you being responsible, us meeting in a empowered state together. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, how does us sharing finances kind of live in that? So I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think it is very important if you're at the stage of relationship where you really do want to step into that the fullness of partnership. And
yeah.
obviously, you're not going to do that. Like most people aren't going to do that week one.
No.
Terrible kid. But not with Adam, though, to be fair. We didn't do it. We didn't blend finances until we lived together. But as soon as we moved in together, that was it. We were all in. Um,
Yeah,
but we spent a lot of time dating outside of that space first to build that trust and whatever as a blended family, particularly with children in tow. I think it's important to have a bit
yeah,
behind that
yeah.
decision. Um,
And everyone's situation is going to be unique, but it comes back to that self-worth piece, right? And what I see a lot of is mums are, mainly raising children, which is the biggest job of all, but you don't get a paycheck and landing into your income account, and it then creates this imbalance naturally.
oh,
Um,
it's
and
very easy to
then
be
it's very emotional. They're trying to do this big job. It's emotional. Your money's not together, and you know the dad goes and provides, etc. But then those conversations haven't been done, and then that's what creates conflict.
absolutely.
So
One
yeah,
of the pieces of advice that I give my all of my kids, boys, girls, is that as soon as you're pregnant, then if one person is staying at home with the children, regardless of who that is, you treat their superannuation payment like another bill.
yeah,
Because it
yeah,
secures everything, regardless of what happens, right? So if the couple stays together, then you've got more money in the superannuation collectively. If the couple
yeah,
eventually separates, which let's face it is a potential, even though people don't want to talk about it, it is a potential if the couple separates. But if the couple separates, then it's not like I have now access to your superannuation because we've been paying into my superannuation. It's even. So it
yeah,
actually like works out really, really smart. But then, the other day I heard Elon Musk talking about how people planning for their retirement now is ridiculous because we're not going to need that because we're going to have universal base income with AI. So, we're in this very, very kind of uncertain pathway when it comes to finances, I think, because we just don't know how it's going to evolve and change and, potentially what hooks are involved in that universal base income as well. We don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
deep conspiracies and there's a lot of light and love and there's a lot of in between. So um,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating topic at the moment, really, really quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of change in landscape and yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
If you were to give people like one piece of advice on how they could secure themselves moving forward in all of that potential uncertainty, what would it be?
Save, save, save. I can't stress it enough. Like, yeah, you've definitely got to have some money in there. Because then, I always say, so in New Zealand, over 40% of New Zealanders couldn't, I know that's probably not really relevant to a lot of people that be listening to this, but just puts it into perspective of that they couldn't save more than $2,000 in a crisis. But when you think about your life, think about how many crises you might have had up until this point, right? And those like crises are generally pretty emotional. And so, yeah, I think in order to create a bit of your own financial stability, you just want to make sure that you've got a safety bucket,
Mm.
essentially.
Is there an
Um,
ideal amount in that safety bucket or an ideal like way of deciding?
I always say to people, what is your security blanket? Because like I know that yours would be so different to what mine would be. Um, I personally think 20K is probably a good amount if you're combined. But again, you've got to think about what does your family look like, what is important to you, and what do you think you would need to get you through like a really hard time. So around 3 months really.
Yeah.
And if something happened that that you needed to use that money for, what would be your figure? And that's kind of what you want to think about.
Mm.
um
We
yeah.
worked it out based on because we've got different insurances, and one of them is income protection insurance for Adam. They won't give it to me based on my health history, but for him, and we looked at, well, how long does it actually take to have that paid out? So
Yeah.
even if you have life insurance and income protection insurance and all of those things, even if you have all of those, which a lot of people don't, but even if
Yeah.
you have all of those things, there's still a time period where that's in process. You don't actually get access to that straight away. Um,
Yeah.
and so,
Yeah.
yeah, we do the 3 month thing as a safety buffer because it feels like no matter what happens, we've got enough to get us to whatever is the next stage, whether that's a new income source or the insurance pays out or whatever
Yeah.
the scenario. But
Yeah. Lots of people, like in the books that I read and stuff, a lot of people say 6 months.
mm,
But I think, I've heard you talk a lot about this as well. Everyone's security,
mm,
their level of security and what that looks like is very different. So, for some people I have conversations and they haven't got any. So to think about 20K, it's like I can't even go there.
yeah.
So that's why I always just start with what your figure is and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
remember it wasn't even that long ago where I had no savings and I had never had savings. I had an ability to kind of manifest money out of nowhere for specific things, which was,
Yeah.
I always got delighted by that. But the capacity to hold money ongoing wasn't there, and would have been less than a decade ago that I had absolutely zero savings. And so I think I started with $50 a fortnight into my savings.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And I was just like, I just need to get it to the point where, like 5 grand was my first figure. I was like, if I can get $5,000,
Yeah.
$5,000
Yeah.
in savings, then, that is like if my car dies, then I can buy another
Yeah.
car. Or,
Yeah.
if the fridge dies or whatever.
Yeah.
And as a single
And
parent,
imagine how that felt to have that,
oh,
you
I
know?
remember how it felt when I
Like,
crossed it. It was like I was like I'm a new person. Like I really it changed the way that I saw myself
yeah,
because I felt like I was an adult now in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah,
Because there was a level of responsibility that I could hold that I had never been able to hold before. Because in the past, when you've got no savings, say if your car breaks down or your fridge needs repair or whatever, those life kind of things happen. What happens is that you've either got to put yourself in debt or you've
yeah,
out to an organization or you've got to ask for help, right?
yeah,
So now,
yeah,
essentially, I'm now the victim or I'm the person who needs rescuing.
yeah,
And so it doesn't feel like it's not a nice conversation to have of like, I don't
no,
have enough money to like do this thing myself that I should be able to do. So
yeah,
again, it kind of adds to that downward spiral of self-worth and confidence and all of the things. So for me, like
yeah,
building my financial integrity has really been massive, huge, huge, huge part in building up my emotional integrity and
yeah,
building my belief in myself.
yeah,
And it has felt very much like a spiritual journey for me.
yeah, yeah, no, gosh. Think about it as well. Yeah. I had this habit, I always saved, but I always would take it out and I'd never spend money on myself. And so, yeah, to kind of keep it in there and now be able to confidently, like, buy something that's important to me, it just, yeah, feels so good.
Mm.
But like you said, I've fallen in love with the journey and the person that you've become along the way, and just wherever you're at is wherever you're at, and that's perfectly okay. And you can only build from that place.
Mm. On a personal level, why is the finance piece like why finances for you?
I was the little girl who, when someone got sick, I'd always think, what financial impact is that going to have on someone? And then, I just saw how emotional it made mum, and she really never could ask for help. So she would just be trying to figure it out, work harder to the detriment of her health at times. And because she was just so proud to ask for help, or, ask for like another way. And then I just kind of saw that, and then I just fell in love with it. And I really want to champion having conversations and hard conversations, making sure that people have, what they need for hard situations. As a family, we've had half a house taken off us in terms of what was entitled to us, through some legal stuff, and more recently, mum passed away last year. And, when something like that happens, it's so emotional, and, you've got a funeral to pay for.
Mm.
And I just felt so proud that it was emotional enough to go through that. The last thing I needed to worry about was money. And I don't know what it's like in Australia, but, you know, you've, everything freezes. The funeral has to be paid for in an amount of time. And if you don't have insurances and stuff, then how is that going to happen? And like, I just I just want to wrap my hands around anyone that is like so emotional in a shit situation, because money shouldn't have to worry when you're going through that. Like, I think about your health journey and all of that. Like, imagine it being going through something that's hard, and then adding the financial pressure on top of it. Then you've got other problems like conflicts with relationships, and I could go on. So yeah, it's a
The way of
yeah,
responsibility.
yeah. I feel like it's my responsibility to change the way that we have conversations about it.
Yeah, it is so true. And like from a health standpoint, the amount of people who, if you have an acute health condition, most people can kind of overcome it and build their finances back up. But if you're talking about a chronic
Yeah,
health condition that wears you down over years,
yeah,
you've,
yeah,
you've got something that fundamentally changes your ability to earn income over a long period of time, if at all. And people tend to be really, and this is not having a dig it's just the reality of it. People tend to be very supportive and actively involved in acute situations. But when
Yeah.
it comes to chronic conditions, when people are sick for years and years and years, like everybody
Yeah.
has fatigue around that. Everybody gets fatigue around that, including
Yeah.
people who want to be able to support, but it's exhausting even as a
Yeah.
supporter, and so all of the supporters kind of drop off, and then the person who's dealing with the chronic health condition is left on their own and very soon has no finances to be able to pay for the alternative therapies that might actually make a difference because they're not government.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a really
Yeah.
it's a full-on thing. So yeah, look, I think baseline message for this podcast is people, let's get our finances in order.
Yeah.
Stop looking at it as something that might, could happen next year or the year after, and I want to prioritize, my nails this year or whatever, and start really looking at, well, where can I fortify myself financially moving forward? Because you just don't know what's around the corner, and you're never going to be sad for having savings.
No. And money gives you choices,
Yeah.
like, and also, like, I guess, as we get older and stuff, like, we might need more things and that as well. So,
And that's
yeah.
just as a caveat. It's not to say don't live and don't have fun. Obviously, you want to be doing
Oh,
well, but not one at the cost of the other in either direction.
yeah. Yeah.
Really finding
Yeah.
that balance point. And like you say, start with something small and
Yeah.
attainable, and work towards that. Make a commitment to that this year. So
Yeah. Because the one thing you're trying to avoid, it's going to come anyway. So,
inevitably.
yeah.
Life. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Stacey, and sharing your incredible wisdom. Really appreciate you and your time. How do people find you and follow you and learn from you?
Yeah, so I have a website which is new. I'm so excited about that. So that's www.staceyadams.co.nz. And you can go and follow me on social media, on Instagram, Stacey Adams underscore money coach, and on Facebook, Stacey Adams Wealth and Abundance Coach.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, gorgeous. Thank you so much. And for all of those listening, looking forward to speaking to you in a fortnight. Okay, that is it from us for today for the Enquiry podcast. All of the links that you're going to want to find is going to be underneath this episode. So jump along and make sure that you're following the people who do join us for the Enquiry podcast. I'm sure you'll agree they are absolutely phenomenal, and it is my absolute pleasure to be able to have them come in and share their wisdom with everybody. If you're wanting to know what I'm up to, jump onto my website, neridamills.com, and you can check out all of my opportunities to get involved, be they free things or programs or events. You can always come along and say hi. I would love to see you.